We're kicking off 2026 with a look at the first announcements from NVIDIA and AMD at CES. Vera Rubin is shipping, Helios is here, and AMD and Intel launched embedded processors with AI capabilities for mobile and edge. We're also seeing more AI in the physical world with NVIDIA's Alpa Mayo, Osmo, and Cosmos. NVIDIA is also acqui-hired Grok, which suggests an increased focus on inferencing in 2026. And we'll look at Accenture's acquisition of Faculty AI and predictions for the rest of the year. Welcome to Utilizing AI, the podcast focused on practical applications of artificial intelligence from the Futurum Group. Each episode brings together diverse perspectives to explore news and use cases of the ways in which AI is transforming enterprise IT and the industries it serves. I'm your host, Stephen Foskett, president of the Tech Field Day business unit here at the Futurum Group. And joining me to kick off 2026 are two fantastic panelists. Let's meet who they are.
Hi, everyone. Brad Shimmin. I'm VP Practice Lead for Data Intelligence, Analytics, and Infrastructure at the Futurum Group.
And hi, I'm Nick Patience. I'm the AI Platforms Practice Lead at Futurum.
And as I said, I'm Stephen Foskett. I've been covering AI here on Utilizing Tech and Utilizing AI for a few years. As I said, we are recording this January 6th, right away here as 2026 has started. And also today is the start of CES, which is one of the big industry groups or industry expos that happens every single year. Now, CES is not an enterprise tech conference, but there certainly is a lot of AI happening. So although we can't dive in too deep because not all of it's happened yet, what's caught your eye coming out of CES so far, Nick?
I guess inevitably the NVIDIA's announcements around Vera Rubin, although not necessarily news, talking about production in volume and shipping later this year, and then AMD's kind of counter with its Helios rack system, and it's just interesting contrast the way the two companies are operating in the space. Obviously, NVIDIA has a dominant market share, as we know, in GPUs. And so a lot of what it's talking about is increased vertical integration. So not only hardware and not only chips, but also NVLink. And then, of course, the software element, including a bunch of new frameworks that it put on GitHub. And then AMD obviously has to, reply with a more multi-vendor ecosystem approach. And it has a UA-Link alternative to NVLink. So I think it's an interesting kind of realpolitik of what happens down at that chip layer in AI infrastructure.
And I think it's interesting to think about the Vera Rubin not as a chip like we did when we thought about or we heard about Blackwell for the first time, for instance, but it's more of an architecture. It's more of a platform, like it's its own little supercomputer. Like you said, Nick, it incorporates memory, networking, storage, and compute, and that alone makes it something that's going to, I would say, appeal to a lot of where investment is heading right now within the AI space for data centers, for companies looking to maximize that vertical integration that they see within innovations like the Vera Rubin platform. But for me, I want to say that what struck my or tickled my fancy with CES was the return of the Dell XPS line. Okay, zero AI, but a beloved brand. Hopefully, everyone listening is old enough to know what that is.
Oh yeah,
but, yeah. So these are like gorgeous laptops built for gaming, built for high performance, and I applaud them, especially in this time period wherein RAM is so difficult to get, in rolling out this 32 gigs for under $2,000 with that name as a backer. Love it.
Yeah, absolutely. And if anything should be competing with the prevalent MacBook Pro contingent out there, it should be Dell's XPS. I know our friend Keith Townsend is a big fan of the XPS line as well. Just a great group overall. And it's interesting on that note too, in that we're seeing a little bit more diversity from these companies in terms of these platforms. AMD is here with Ryzen embedded processors. Intel's Panther Lake is here, which has AI capabilities as well. So on the client side, if 2025 was the year of the AI PC, I think 2026 is also the year of the AI PC.
And the edge too, right,
Yeah.
Stephen and Nick? It's when you look at NVIDIA rolling out their Jetson 7000, I think that was at CES, and you get basically a Blackwell architecture for under 70 watts power consumption. That's pretty amazing for what 2000 again. What a price point, $2,000, assuming you buy a lot of them. It's an interesting time for hardware right now, and we're seeing a lot more diversity than I would have expected in this market.
Yep.
It's interesting, kind of, as we, interesting sort of base level for the robotics and the physical AI, explosion that we're expecting to happen this year and next year, I guess. And obviously, those companies we mentioned are going to be at the forefront of all that.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit about that physical AI concept because, of course, NVIDIA is here with, let's call it Alpa Mayo. I wasn't at CES, so I don't know how to say this. Alpa Mayo. Brad, what is this?
None of us know. It's actually their set of models or family models and supportive frameworks, all geared around robotics. And so you've got specializations for things like Alpha Sim, and you have a bunch of frameworks for designing training runs for robotics. Like you have a visual model for a robot that's a restaurant robot, let's say, that there are very specialized training runs that you must do in order to train the robot to flip an egg properly. And with Alpa Mayo, what we see from NVIDIA right now is this like massive specialization of helping their customers and their partners build out the robotic solutions on top of their own set of models, like the Nematron 3 family, and which includes Groot, which caught my attention in particular because NVIDIA released at the same time a full collection of like thousands and thousands of data points for training. Sorry, that's the wrong word to use, but you know what I mean. They've actually opened up training data that's completely open source. It's on GitHub. I'm sorry, not GitHub, but Hugging Face. You can download it and use it however you see fit.
And the Osmo, what was it called? Osmo robotics workflow development cycle thing for orchestrating, synthetic data generation using their Cosmos world models, as NVIDIA calls them. And so I guess that's and then I think they also announced at CES, more Cosmos foundation models, transfer, predict, reason, and other ones like that. So yeah, it's a lot of as we know with NVIDIA's announcements, although everybody kind of focuses on the chips and love to see Jensen standing there holding something physical, in order for all of these things to actually make a difference in the world, the software is increasingly is so important, is absolutely crucial, and NVIDIA is extremely well placed there, and a lot of it is open source, but there's also crucial layers that are not. And so, that's how that's how they play the market. Yeah, CUDA being the ultimate.
Absolutely.
Yeah, totally.
Well, who can blame them? I mean, they are a for-profit company, and they're certainly raking in the profit right now. We also heard of an acquisition, or sort of an acquisition, by NVIDIA over the holiday. One of the companies I've been following closely for a long time is Grok with a Q, not the other Grok that also made news this week for a reason that I'd rather not talk about. Again. Grok with a Q, they were an early hardware startup in the AI space. A bunch of Google engineers got together. Lately, they've been using their inferencing hardware as a platform, basically developing enterprise applications around AI. It's great stuff. Apparently, the company has been acqui-hired by NVIDIA, even though it still kind of exists. We talked about that on the TechStrong Gang. What's your take on NVIDIA plus Grok with a Q?
I mean, it's a weird. Well, from what we know, it's a slightly weird deal, though, isn't it? It's kind of, what was it, $20 billion to acquire assets and IP and people. But there's also kind of non-exclusive nature to it. So I think, because Grok was building these language processing units, LPUs, and so I guess that's what they were, and they were extremely performant in real time token generation, and I guess that's what they're looking to get. So it's again, I guess one of these, NVIDIA's model, or not models, have shifted, but its business model has evolved from training to inference, and Grok was very much an inference shop, and allegedly still is going to be one, but it's not entirely clear what it's going to do with its key people not there, and some of its license, its IP now in hands of NVIDIA.
Yeah, I would imagine that it's going to play a nice, balancing role within NVIDIA's NIMS architecture, for instance, because that's all about containerized, instances where you can stand up a fully working stack and just start inferencing off of it. And if Grok is an alternative to a third party like OpenRouter, for instance, that NVIDIA users would, I'm sure, appreciate that. And as Stephen mentioned, they've been around for a little while. Grok has, and a little while being less than 5 years. But nonetheless, they, I think we're very early to tackle what we see right now as such a huge area of investment in terms of highly specialized chips for inferencing. And you just look no further than AWS reInvent we had early in December last year, where all roads pointed toward Trainium, and how important that had become to AWS, not for training, but for inferencing.
Boy, they named that one wrong. No,
what's in a name?
I do think that you're onto it there, Brad. When I thought of Grok and when I thought of NVIDIA, my first thought was exactly what you mentioned, what we heard at reInvent, what we heard from Google Cloud, what we've been hearing from Microsoft and others about using specialized hardware to do inferencing, to do token generation. That's really Grok's strong point. That's certainly what Google and Microsoft and AWS have been leaning into, along with the software platform aspect of it, which is something that Grok has been leaning into. And so I do caution listeners that this is very new. We don't yet know which components are going where and what the angle is going to be here. But I could certainly see a situation where NVIDIA is part of that conversation as well, just like Google Cloud, AWS, and Azure, right? Yeah.
But they also partner deeply with all of those. It's
of course they do,
a highly cooperative, competitive marketplace. Yep.
Now, another acquisition we just heard about is Accenture. So not that Accenture was purchased, but that Accenture is buying Faculty AI and promoting the head of an AI company to become the CTO there. I know that there's been a lot of fear, uncertainty, doubt, and mischief around AI replacing people. Accenture is the people company. What's your take, Brad, on the Accenture faculty story?
Yeah, I don't know enough about Faculty to say technologically what impact they're going to have. I think instead what this points to is, a sort of raising of a banner at Accenture to say that we are an AI company. We are not a people company anymore. And I guess you could call them accelerationists for that, and for better or worse. But I recall visiting them in New York City 2 years ago and having them demonstrate their in-house AI that they were building to help optimize and 10x their employees to be better at their jobs. And I'm sure nothing has changed since then. I'm sure that is still what their objective is here, is to become a much more efficient company at helping their customers become more efficient companies through the adoption and use of AI.
Yeah, I mean, here in London, Faculty AI is quite prominent, and they're quite well known for government work. Yeah, I read something this morning trying to make out that they're the UK's equivalent of Palantir, which is size wise not really comparable. But it did have this kind of they called it a decision intelligence platform called Faculty Frontier. And again, I think it's kind of these forward deployed engineers into customers, but they had a lot of government contracts. going back many years. I think they're about 12 years old as a company. But yeah, that CEO Mark Warner. If I go to a lot of London AI events, and either he or somebody else from that company is often there. They usually keep themselves to themselves. They're quite quiet about what they do, so it gives you an idea of what some of the work is that they've done. But yeah, with him becoming Accenture CTO, it does kind of reinforce that realignment they said back in September, October, I think it was, of last year. Realign around AI, laying off up to 11,000 employees over time, not in one go, obviously. Attrition and all the other kind of usual words that are used. Put it in perspective, Accenture has 800,000 employees, so it's a small drop. But faculty does a lot of work with OpenAI, with Anthropic, with the UK AI Safety Institute, AI Security Institute, and the stuff like that. So there's a lot of kind of AI safety work. While I'm very skeptical about some of that emphasis around AI safety, I think it's a little bit kind of trying to induce some sort of panic around what AI does. They were pretty heavily involved in that. So I think it's it's an interesting time, and I sort of wrote a little note about it on very little note on LinkedIn, and my last 3 words were kind of reskill or exit. So it's kind of it's that kind of thing. Like if you work for Accenture or you work for any kind of company where knowledge work is key, you've got to adopt AI. And I think that's pretty blindingly obvious statement. But it was interesting. I noticed when they announced their last results, which were announced in December, they have a series of charts. Q1, I think it was advanced AI bookings, advanced AI revenues, and all that kind of thing. And then at the bottom, it had a note saying this would be the last quarter in which we share advanced AI bookings and revenues. We've reached a point, I'm reading it now, where advanced AI is being embedded in some way across nearly everything we do. And so, et cetera, we're not going to then split it out. So, when does AI is the old gag is AI is whatever it doesn't work yet. And so, they're seeing it as so embedded in everything they do that it is business. It's not a necessarily a peculiar thing. Obviously, as the leader of the AI platforms practice, I would counter there are some unique things to AI, and will be for many years to come. But for a company like that to make that kind of statement and bring in somebody like that, I think it's an interesting marker for the rest of the industry.
Yeah, it does reflect the nature of business that a company of Accenture's status. I mean, as you said, this is a company with almost 800,000 employees, billions of revenue. I think it says here 120 locations. I mean, Accenture is everywhere. They're working with basically every major company. And to have a company of that status say effectively, AI is just part of what we do and part of what everybody does, I guess that reflects where we're at in 2026. Frankly, it sounds a little bit like Futurum. I mean, that's what we're doing here as well, right?
Yeah, and I think we kind of moved from away from the AI experimentation years of 2023 and 24. 25 was a new set of experiments with agentic. And I'm not saying in 2026 agentic is going to be completely mainstream, which it isn't. But other elements of AI, maybe more on the kind of predictive model side, are just the meat and potatoes of how technology gets adopted.
I would say, with Accenture in particular, what this makes me think of is that these companies, Futurum included, are right now not endeavoring to enter into an opportunity where they're making AI, but instead they're using AI to do their job, to do what they do as a company. Because that early meeting I mentioned, it was all about, we're going to have our own, chatbot model with its own anthropomorphized name, and it's going to, be so and so to do what you get from, OpenAI and others. And I think we're seeing a shift where companies are starting to look at this as just how they do business, not the business they do. And you could see that reflected in how they, talked about and positioned their earnings statements. I think that that's very telling.
And can I get a hallelujah on that? I think I should remind listeners that this is called Utilizing AI. I named it Utilizing AI in 2020 because I was waiting for the time when we were making practical use of this technology, not when it's a science project, not when it's something cool, not when we're doing it for the sake of doing it, which frankly sounds like a lot of AI out there right now, is that we're just sort of playing with it. I mean, now we're actually using it for productive purposes. And I think that that's what I want to see in 2026. I want to see this being used for productive purposes that let us do other things, the things we always do, let us do them better. Brad, I've said that the Futurum's use of AI and the specifically the signal report that I know that you've been deeply involved in, it's not that it's AI, it's that it's this technology that gives you and Nick and the rest of the folks a superpower when it comes to analyzing data. And that's, I think, what Accenture is saying, is that AI gives their clients extraordinary abilities to do the things they already do. And that's what I'd like to see more of in 2026. So let's talk a little bit about what we're looking forward to. Nick, I know that you've had some questions recently about what are the big momentous things that are going to come out in 2026. Could you maybe reiterate that for our audience? What business moves, what IPOs, what actions do you think are going to happen in 26 that are going to really shake the foundations here?
Sure. So on the financial side of it, rather than the sort of technology side of it, I think we're reaching that stage of maturity where exits happen. Companies looking for exits either through M&A or through IPOs. And although the IPO market for enterprise AI has been pretty quiet, from what I hear and what I see out there, there's a lot of optimism that it will pick up. I mean, mind you, that always happens in January. There's a lot of optimism that's going to pick up. You have to see what the state of the actual market is, whether it's ready for it. But you've got OpenAI and Anthropic really as the two kind of poster children, as it were, of not only enterprise AI but also consumer AI in terms of OpenAI, a lot of AIs. But those are both potential IPOs this year. I think they're interesting contrasts in valuations, to say the least. So OpenAI, rumor is maybe looking for a $1 trillion valuation. Its most recent round was at $500 billion. So there's a bit of a gap there, which it might that's kind of a price for perfection scenario. Everything has to work for it to be worth that much money. I mean, not to say it won't get it. But then there's also the interest around Microsoft's stake. Obviously, Microsoft was incredibly prescient in 2019 with what it did. But also it does create a little bit of a messy kind of scenario from a governance point of view. So that will be interesting. Anthropic is a more kind of enterprise safety hedge, and the kind of more, it's kind of the more sensible looking, enterprise AI company at a lower valuation, maybe 300 billion, something like that. Who knows? But it's so I think it's if investors, OpenAI should be would be the kind of bellwether AI stock if it went. But Anthropic could be the kind of more conservative alternative. And then if you think about what's the purpose of IPOs, is to raise money and to provide liquidity and all that kind of stuff. So when they raise the money, where does that money go? What is the use of the proceeds? Now, you would have said maybe if this was in fantasy land, this was happening 18 months ago, NVIDIA would be vacuuming up all that new cash. Now, it might be interesting. It's obviously with these companies both working on custom silicon, maybe that's not going to be the case. So where does the proceeds go? So I think a lot of it will go towards custom silicon development. I also think it will go towards energy infrastructure, and obviously data centers and all that kind of stuff. So I think it's those that have those stocks or those companies that have the kind of clearest path or the clearest picture of owning a stack. And the stack these days doesn't start with the computer; it starts essentially with the power and land and things like that. Those have the biggest, the clearest path for that would be probably get the most rewarded, and would, in theory at least, can take on hyperscalers, at least in terms of how the public market sees it. So just from a financial point of view, there's many other things we think is going to happen this year, but then that's going to be an interesting one to look at.
Yeah, and for me, I feel like if I were to try to see what's coming for the entirety of the year for the space that I look at, I would say that this is definitely, the morning coffee after the hangover that I think we've been going through a little bit with AI and what it can and can't do. And I think we're going to see a tremendous focus on, the science projects are over. It's all about, if it doesn't scale, if it doesn't make money, it gets cut. And this goes to what Nick is talking about with this emphasis on chips and vertical integration all the way down to the power coming into your data center. But it's also about, how that software stack actually works in supporting that optimization, because as we all know, we've gone through a bunch of phases in the industry where we've tried to have these sort of, do everything platforms, best of breed, that, have a sense of lock-in, but also have a sense of performance to them because of that lock-in. And what we're trying to understand right now is, well, can we have our cake and eat it too? Can we have a highly composable stack that still emphasizes speed? So you see companies like Microsoft with their Cosmos DB, for instance, rolling out, basically caching, semantic caching within that database to support agentic workflows directly. You see the sort of death of ideas like data meshes and even data fabrics to be replaced by a more composable landscape or data estate, as we like to say, that's built on top of a semantic layer, which is something we all really need to get behind. And if we aren't hiring people that understand what the word epistemology means, we're already losing. So I think it's going to be a very interesting vendor community and hiring situation in 2026 in terms of what we hire for and how we build our solutions. It's not anywhere we've been before.
Just to add to that, a few other things that my practice will be looking at this year, and I think maybe some things we'll have be future topics of discussion on this podcast. Sovereign AI and kind of the corporate nature of corporate control. That's going to be a big focus this year. It already was for towards the back end of last year, but I think increasingly that will be. Similarly related is kind of global AI regulation and compliance. The EU AI Act really does come into force properly in 2026. And obviously we've seen in the US, although there are various state things going on, Trump has made it very clear that, wants a federal AI regulation. So there's not, as I say, 50 different regimes to deal with. Obviously agentic AI, if not at scale, rolling out more fully. And I guess down at the infrastructure layer, we talked about it just now really, but the energy and cooling as a kind of bottleneck for data center build out, bottleneck for all the stuff that goes in data centers, and I think that will become a major issue. And as we kind of said earlier, would probably result in some sort in M&A. We've already seen it to a certain extent, and I expect we'll see more of that. And then the kind of fragmentation of models, which I don't mean breaking up of models. I mean the landscape. LLMs are really important. They're not the only game in town. Small language models will become more and more prominent. So those are some of the things that we're looking at. When I was drawing up the list, I was thinking this is getting quite infrastructure heavy. Agentic is kind of where where the business value will be created. But there's a lot of stuff going on underneath that we'll be spending time in 2026. To say we should probably dig into one or two of those in the coming weeks.
Yeah, and another point I'd like to make too is that the AI infrastructure market is by no means dead. There's still a lot of money flowing into AI infrastructure, networking hardware. You look at companies like Cisco, Broadcom, and companies like that are doing so much chip work. And for me, one of the dark horse heroes of AI that I'm looking at is Google Cloud. I'm hearing such good things from enterprise users about Gemini as an alternative. And you talk about like you did, Nick, about these vertically integrated stacks. Don't count the hyperscalers out. I would say they know how to run data centers. They know how to run platforms. They know how to work with enterprise companies. They've been learning it the hard way for 20 years now, and I think that companies like AWS are really going to roar forward. Microsoft, Google, in 2026 as applications become more practical. That would be my prediction. Don't count the hyperscalers out.
Oh yeah,
I totally agree, Stephen. I just want to add really quickly to that it has amazed me as both a practitioner and an analyst in looking at Google Cloud in particular, in terms of how they're investing in their APIs around Gemini. And it seems like almost every couple of weeks they reinvent what we took for granted before. So we used to like scrape web pages to turn them into, to embed them in a RAG pipeline. And they're like, no, we own the search index. So why don't we make it so that you don't have to scrape web pages? You just query the web page and get all the data from it. And they're doing the same thing again and again with different aspects of what was expensive and time consuming in terms of optimizing the inferencing cycle. So it is the money that they're spending is all about the gravity. Still has been, always will be about data gravity on their platform. But my goodness, with it, like you said, AWS and Microsoft and Google are seriously investing in making the, giving enterprises the tool set they need to do this the right way.
Final words, Nick?
Yeah, just on that, I would say, I think of the three hyperscalers we're talking about, I would say Google probably had the best year of 2025 in terms of improvement of its position in the market. But we reset. Now they're all back to zero in the kind of analyst ranking game, and we go again. And so it'd be really interesting to watch all three of those and many others, maybe not quite hyperscalers, but other cloud providers around the world. And as we say, the on-premises shift and push, because the likes of Broadcom with VMware and Red Hat with its software stack, selling through other cloud providers around the world. There's an awful lot of interest in that stuff as well. So it's not all about infrastructure, but there's a lot of infrastructure stuff to watch to enable all this good AI stuff to happen.
Yep, absolutely. And I'll just throw in a little thing. We are going to be holding an AI infrastructure field day event end of January. We're going to be hearing from some of the companies that are building AI infrastructure stacks. We'll also be doing another AI field day event. And as we joke, every field day event is AI field day. So thank you very much for joining us, both of you. Before we go, give us a hint of what you're going to be working on in the coming quarter in terms of research at Futurum. So why don't we start with Nick this time?
So yeah, we're going to be redoing our AI platform Signal, and we're going to look at some other sort of subsectors of that, potentially around sovereign AI. Maybe I haven't quite made my mind up on that. I am redoing my decision maker survey, so that's going to be going into the field this quarter. So that will be a re-up of that. We've only just published our market forecast in December. Our 5-year market forecast, which is really interesting. So those are some of the things I'm going to be working on.
Brad?
It's similar to me. For me, we're twins, obviously. So I actually have a second forecast that we're doing for data intelligence, analytics, and infrastructure coming out. That'll be 5 years as well, and also fielding a new survey for decision maker. We call it decision maker survey. And I also will be updating my data intelligence platform Signal actually really quickly. So that'll be something we'll publish in early February for that. And I have a new one that I'll be working on. I'm really excited about. It's going to be about semantic BI. So if for all of you guys who love a good dashboard, I would invite you to tune in for that one.
Well, that's really the thing about Signal, and the thing that is exciting about what Futurum Research is doing is the fact that you can refresh this data much, much more frequently than ever before, thanks to the tools that we're using on the back end. And it just means that stuff is more valid because, as you said, there are things being introduced every single day in this market. And so, you cannot rely on a year-old report when making decisions on pretty much anything in enterprise tech these days. So thank you both for joining us. Those of you who are interested in all of this, check out futurumgroup.com. Please do subscribe to the Utilizing AI podcast. You can also catch our other podcasts, the Security Boulevard podcast, Agents of Dev, as well as, of course, the Tech Field Day podcast for more. If you enjoyed this discussion, please do subscribe. You can find us on YouTube as well as in your favorite podcast application. Please do give us a rating, review, and a comment. We would love to hear from you. This podcast is brought to you by the analysts and experts from the Futurum Group, where insight meets AI. For show notes and more episodes, head over to techstrong.ai, which is our sister news site, the Utilizing AI YouTube channel, or, of course, the TechStrong TV app, where a great many people apparently are watching this, according to our stats. The majority of people seem to watch this on the on TVs and in formats like that. Thank you for listening, and we will catch you next week.